Welcome to the Fleet Safety Geeks podcast, where we discuss the latest industry trends, best practices, and strategies for keeping your fleet and its drivers safe on the road. Whether you're a fleet manager, safety professional, or a driver yourself, our goal is to provide valuable insights and actionable tips to help you prevent accidents, protect lives, and promote a culture of safety within your organization. From vehicle maintenance and driver training to regulations and technology, we cover it all. Tune in every week as we explore the challenges and opportunities of fleet safety in today's fast-paced, ever-changing world. All right, welcome back to another episode of Fleet Safety Geeks. We're here with Phil Mosier, as usual, and Kevin Donnelly from Discount Tire. Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for being on. Phil, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Bob. And Kevin, thank you for joining us today.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, for sure. Kevin, do you want to give a quick introduction on yourself and what you do at Discount Tire?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the strategic growth manager here on our fleet and B2B team. And I've been with Discount Tire going on 3 years now. It's been a blessing to be a member of this team and work with some really great folks over here at Discount Tire. For those of you who may not be as familiar with our brand, we're the largest independent tire retailer in the United States. We have 1,150 stores in 40 different states today. Our company is 100% privately held, company owned and operated. And to this day, we very much so still are the family business that we've been since day one. Prior to my time at Discount Tire, I had the opportunity to work for the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. And most of my career has been on the sales and business development side. And I'm based here in Phoenix, Arizona, and it's a beautiful winter day here, 65 degrees and sunny.
Yeah, well, it's 22 at my house, Kevin, so knock it off.
Yeah, it's 11 degrees in Cleveland. Phil, the colder weather's coming your way. I think you are going to get like 30 below.
You're welcome to keep it.
Yeah. So, enjoy that 65 degrees. I'm sorry it's so chilly, Kevin.
Our lows are getting down into the 30s and 40s, and you see people bringing out the winter coats, and it's, you would think that we're in the middle of a blizzard, but it's just another day in the desert for us.
So all what you
30s and 40s is when we put our shorts back on. That's great. No, it sounds like you have a lot of great experience in the tire industry, and Discount Tire is a great company. It's one of the national account providers that most of the fleets use. I'm sure that they're going to be familiar with the brand. But it's a really good opportunity to get you on to really talk about tire safety. Phil and I talk a lot about, Phil makes a good point. Like there's only a small amount of rubber that's keeping that vehicle on the road. And we rely pretty heavily on making sure that that little piece of rubber is safe and doing its job to keep that vehicle safe. So we thought it'd be good to have someone actually come on talking about tires, because sometimes maybe people aren't believing us.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Bob, I think that sometimes is people generally don't give a lot of thoughts to their tires, right? And, unless it goes flat, and then they start complaining because they didn't maintain their tire and it went flat. But people really should check their tires. I mean, I think on a weekly basis, right? Because you hit one pothole, which Pennsylvania is known as the land of the pothole. It can change the air pressure in your tire. So think about that. It's about the size of your hand is what 4 of those patches. That's what your entire car is running on, right? Acceleration, braking, steering, everything dependent on those 4 pieces of rubber touching the road. So it's obviously obvious why tires are so important and why it's so important to safety.
Right. So maintaining those tires, knowing how to read the tire, what the tire is telling you when the tire's low or when the tread's low, what does that mean? How is the tread wearing? Kevin, I assume we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
Oh, absolutely. And safety is a big part of what we do here. It's really ingrained in our culture, and it's important to understand the basics. And typically, we believe if you follow the basics, you're going to be safe over the road. And we really like to educate our customers to make sure that giving them the tools and the facts and the information to make the right decisions for themselves.
Oh, that's great. So what do you do for fleets? So if a fleet comes in and a driver comes in and says, "Hey, I need an oil change," I assume Discount Tire can also look at the whole vehicle as far as other
No,
service. No.
we'll probably recommend them to one of our partners or
Okay.
some of our friends down the street. We at Discount Tire, we're tires, wheels, and wiper blades only.
Okay.
So it's a specific part of who we are, and a lot of the specialization that we've done in our business is really focused on that wheel end assembly. And our goal is to keep our customers safe, whether they're fleet or retail and consumer customers, really at that contact point, like you said, Phil, that part that hits the road. And because we specialize and because we don't do a lot of those additional services such as oil changes, it's allowed us to really perfect our approach and do some things a little beyond, say, the industry standard for safety and for quality and the level of service we provide.
That's great. Yep. Okay, cool. But you do have fleets come in, right? I mean, we
Oh,
can come in with our fleet vehicle and get tires. I know I see
oh,
Discount
absolutely.
Tires go up on my bill.
The,
Okay.
the fastest growing portion of our business. And
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
Okay. But still, how do you treat a driver when they come in and say, "I need tires"?
Well,
I mean, how do you approach that?
our team, first and foremost, we're going to gather some information. So for us, we call that the visit the vehicle process. And we have a mobility device. It's like a digital scanning device, maybe a little bit larger than a cell phone. And our team are going to walk that driver out to their vehicle, and we're going to take a look at all 5 tires in that vehicle. So, all 4 tires that are touching the road and also the spare. We're going to do a few things during this process. So on that scanner that I mentioned, typically there's a little, laser tread scanning device that sits on the back of it. And what we're going to run that over the face of the tire 3 times. So we're gaining laser accurate tread depth data on all 5 tires. We're going to check the air pressure. And then we're also going to scan the VIN of that vehicle. And by scanning the VIN of the vehicle, we're learning exactly what that vehicle is, down to the trim level, down to the wheel size, and the original equipment that vehicle was initially sold with. So all of this data that we pull in this, let's call it a 3-minute process, that's going to come right down into our point of sale. And built into our point of sale, we have a proprietary fitment guide that takes all of the original equipment manufacturers' recommendations, and then also, what does and does not fit on that vehicle. And so we can compare, hey, what do we have available versus what exactly is this vehicle that we've just identified. And the accuracy of this data is really, really important for us because it helps us have a conversation around the facts and where that customer is currently at, on their journey.
Kevin,
Okay.
so I would imagine that laser scanner is probably just a little bit more accurate than the penny test, right? And then the other thing that I love hearing you say is that you check the VIN to see what the original equipment was. Can you speak to that and why it's so important that you stay with manufacturing specs with tires?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, Phil. We had one of our largest customers 2 weeks ago reached out and had some questions around upsizing, and what they're seeing a lot of with many of their clients today is, hey, they're out in West Texas. A bunch of their drivers are driving Ford F-150s, F-250s, a lot of pickup trucks, and they're coming in for tires, and they're constantly upsizing into larger sizes. And the concern of the fleet is well, how is this going to affect my vehicle? Is this even safe? And one of the benefits to being able to pull that VIN data, from the vehicle is we can scrape that against the manufacturer's recommendations, and our system, like our actual fitment guide and point of sale, won't even allow our people to complete a transaction if it doesn't fall within the manufacturer's safety guidelines.
Awesome.
And you guys can probably imagine, you drive a big pickup truck, you want a fancy set of wheels and a really good looking set of tires on there.
Mhm.
Well, anything we do is gonna remain safe. And there's many different ways. I mean, depends on how far down this rabbit hole you guys want to go, but there's a few different things that could affect, how that vehicle drives. But at the end of the day, the safety piece is the most important.
That's good to hear. I mean, yeah, I've seen some jacked up vehicles over the years, and I really have in doing some crash investigations. I've attributed, the improper tires or poor tires in any number of collisions that I've investigated. Just going again, the rubber on the road, where the rubber meets the road, and I put that in as a factor in the cause of the crash. So really important that you stay within those OEM specs.
Yeah, I have an example of where we drive minivans for our fleet, and we can put on all weather tires. They're snow rated. They're not snow tires. They're just snow rated tires. But I had one driver, he was putting on all terrain tires, and he actually convinced the shop to do basically, pickup truck all terrain off road tires. And I'm like, how did you get a shop to approve that? And of course, it was not a national account shop. It was an independent shop, and he just said, "Hey, put those on." But it's gonna make that vehicle handle a lot differently than the original equipment, tire
Handling
manufacturer.
is for one, Bob. You're absolutely right. Let's say in very severe upsizing issues, it's going to affect the handling. It's going to affect the ride comfort. It's going to affect the fuel efficiency. In city, typically, it's that fuel efficiency is going to drop, and you're not going to see the sort of efficiency that you may have beforehand. On the highway, depending on how much upsizing was done, you might actually see a more efficient ride. Again, in severe cases, especially when it's outside of the safety parameters of the OEM, it's not going to matter. It's the fuel efficiency is going downhill no matter what. Other things to keep in mind, for instance, if you upsize into a larger tire and wheel, the actual reported mileage on your odometer won't be accurate. And there's plenty of calculators online that can help you figure out what the true mileage of that vehicle is. But it's another thing to consider.
And speed limit, right, Kevin? Won't that affect what is
precisely
showing on the speedometer? I wasn't speeding. My radar is showing otherwise,
set
right?
Cruise control for 75, and in reality, you're doing 79.
Right.
So
Right.
could be a fast way to get a ticket.
Yeah. All right. Well, so when's the right time to change tire? When they're bald? When you see the steel tread in there? When it pops?
Well, that's a great question, Bob. I mean, if on slide 2, I'll reference. There's a few key numbers we want to keep in mind here, and the most important of all of these is 6 years. So, we recommend replacing any tire that's been in service for 6 years or longer. And the reason for that is past that 6-year mark, that tire is much more susceptible to weather checking. That it's aged. It's been put through a much longer lifespan at that point. And when we think about how a tire is built and what goes into it, the tire is really not what holds the vehicle and holds the weight of the vehicle. That's what the air pressure is for. So that air is what is holding that vehicle and holding all the weight you put in that vehicle. The tire is simply a tool to hold the air in. And so if you guys would imagine, if you take a rubber band, for instance, and you have this brand new rubber band right out of the package, and it's fantastic, and it's really, really stretchy, and you can move it back and forth as much as you want. That rubber band is fantastic, and it's in really good shape. Well, you take the same rubber band and you go put it outside, in the Arizona heat or in the Ohio winters, and you let that go through a cycle of really, really warm, really, really cold, you're stretching it all the time, and you do that for 6 years, that rubber band is not going to have the same strength that it maybe once did. And some of that's just because of time and the stress it's been put under over that time. Whether that tire has been sitting out, in the side of your house on a vehicle you might not use every day, or if it's being driven on a regular basis. That 6 year mark is really, really important. And to the point where at Discount Tire, we've gone and taken it a step further. We have certain service guidelines we follow in order to maintain this level of safety. For instance, any tire that's 10 years or older, our team won't touch. So what I mean by that is, if you come in and request us to rotate a set of tires that is 10 years or older, our answer is, hey, politely, we don't feel safe taking responsibility for the service of these tires. We highly recommend that we look at some options, to put you into a set of products that are safe. And that's an extreme example. But let's look at, hey, tires that, are 6 to 10 years old, kind of in that, hey, it's probably not the safest, but that may be an instance where we'll rotate, but we won't dismount and put that tire back into service. So it's kind of that structure that we've put in place has helped us educate our customers on what's safe and what's not. And of course, we're always going to do our best to work with the customer and make sure that we're doing what's in their best interest, and communicating very clearly the why behind it.
That's great. You referenced slide 2, and for our audio listeners, Kevin's showing some slides, and they'll be on YouTube. So if you want to see these slides, just go over to our YouTube channel, Fleet Safety Geeks, and feel free to look at it there. And while you're there, give us a like, and why don't you subscribe? But yeah, getting back to the age of tires, I've seen tires that have like little cracks growing in the sidewall. And I think it's called like dry rot. I mean, tires and the rubber just wears out over time, right?
Some of our friends at some of the major tire manufacturers might call that weather checking. It's
Okay.
It comes back to that rubber band example. It's simply age. And if you had a tire that was 6 years or older and didn't have at least a little bit of that weather checking, I would be surprised.
Gotcha. Okay.
A lot of this, Bob, again, a lot of this is going to vary upon environment. I know out here in Arizona, things are really, really dry, and that may lead to tires, having some of those effects a little sooner than in maybe more humid markets.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. All right. So it says on slide 2, you talked about the age, the air pressure, and then the tread depth. It says replace at 430 seconds. Is that when, you always hear like, oh, your tires are a 6, right? Like, what's a 6? Is that 630 seconds?
So tread depth is measured in 30 seconds of an inch. So, these are literal centimeters, and really this tread, a new tire today, depending on the vehicle, typically would start with 10 or 11, 30 seconds of tread depth. But really, only 6 to 7 of those 30 seconds are usable. When we get down to 430 seconds, that's where we would recommend replacement, or replacement in the very near future. And it comes down to safety. I mean, if you take a new tire, and this is generally speaking, your stopping distance in wet conditions, the average stopping distance will be around 160 feet. Whereas if you get down to 130 second, that stopping distance is almost twice as far. You're looking closer to 300 feet. Again, I'm speaking, generally. It might vary vehicle to vehicle and tire to tire.
Sure. Yeah.
But really, when we talk about safety, anything 230 seconds or less needs to be replaced immediately. and that's where, you know, to use our best practices as another example, we talk about something that's critical to safety. We do not service tires that are 230 seconds or less. You know, it's, you know, could often be a conversation with a customer where do a little education. But this data, we're not just making these numbers up. I mean, a lot of this data comes from the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, NHTSA, and that's where we've built this guideline for our customers. And Bob, if you want to flash to slide 1, it kind of gives a great visualization of how that stopping distance will kind of degrade over that tire's life cycle as you're wearing more and more tread off of that tire.
Yeah, just to go ahead, Phil.
No, that's a fact. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I was going to say, we always tell our drivers that we replace it for 30 seconds, especially if they challenge us. You know, they say my tire's got 20,000, you know, miles on it, and it's like completely used up. We send it to the shop and it comes back at 7 or 6:30 seconds. And I say, we replace it for 30 seconds. Now, sometimes I will replace at 6:30 seconds if the driver's already in the shop getting an oil change, and based on their driving history, they might be at 4:30 seconds by the time they come in for their next oil change. So I'll just do it now, so I don't have to, you know, have them come in twice, you know, and get tires later. And it doesn't really hurt at 6:30 seconds to replace them a little bit early. It could be a little bit of waste of money, but again, if their safety is at risk, you know, I approved that earlier. But I do tell them 2:30 seconds, anything lower than that is illegal, and we can't have it on the road. So yeah, I'm glad your numbers say the same.
And just so people have an understanding as why tread is so important. I mean, if you think about it, you know, the more tire to road surface contact you have, the safer you're going to be. I mean, that's why they have slicks on race cars, right? Because you have more rubber touching the road again. But the reason you need that tread, if we lived in a world where it was dry all the time with no debris on the road, the slick would be the thing, right? But you need that tread so it dissipates the water, the snow, the, you know, whatever that's on the road. It has to get it out from underneath the tire. And unless you have good tread depth, it's just not going to work. So that's why it's so important for people to make sure that, you know, go in there and get the laser and pull it out there and make sure that you have good tread depth, because otherwise next time it rains, you could hydroplane and get into a world of hurt.
Yeah, it's a great point, Phil. It's there's been an awful lot of research and development on the OEM side to put in to figure out what the best way to build that pattern to disperse the water from underneath the tire. And you could have the best pattern in the world and the latest, greatest, you know, tread block technology, but none of that matters if there's only 230 seconds of tread left on that tire, because the grooves are nearly completely flat. So.
And if you don't mind, can we speak now to air pressure and why that's so important also?
Yeah.
Again, if it's not properly inflated, you're not going to have good tread depth. Your tire tread, again, touching the road surface. If you mind speaking to that, Kevin?
Yeah, you know, you guys mentioned checking your air pressure once a week. I mean, that's phenomenal. Y'all are overachieving. We recommend a air pressure check and a tire inspection once a month, and for us that can happen pretty quickly. I mean, at our stores we do that for free. It's just something we like to provide for our customers, whether or not you bought your tires at discount. Something we do just to help keep folks safe, and that every 30-day time frame is a good cadence to keep up with things. Typically, you know, like you could lose a few psi over that time frame, but it also to do a visual inspection right alongside it is important as well. You know, to look for anything, you know, out of the ordinary,
gouges or bubbles in the sidewalls, things like that. And so an underinflated tire, and tell me if I'm correct here, Kevin, when it starts to rotate, the center is going to suck up in, and you're only going to have the edges running. An overinflated tire, you're going to have the center of the tire just touching, and you won't have the full flat, you know, the width of the tire touching it. Is that correct?
You're absolutely right, Phil. It's gonna affect the contact patch, what actually hits the road. And there's a great illustration of this on slide 3. You know, Bob, if you want to switch over there, we've kind of got a cutaway version you're seeing here for the folks following us on YouTube. But on the left, you have your typical what the typical tire looks like as it contacts the road under proper inflation. And moving left to right, here we see, what an underinflated tire looks like, and the shoulders of that underinflated tire are starting to touch the road. And what that means is the kind of the center may start to rise up just a bit, but really what it means, Phil, is that the shoulders are wearing. They're the ones that are taking the brunt of they're the ones that are taking the brunt of that. And the tire now is actually having to help support the weight in the vehicle. So under the proper inflation, it's the air is doing all of the weight supporting. And now under this condition, the tire's having to help the air out to help support that weight. And so when you underinflate a tire, or that you just haven't reinflated the tire in a while, or haven't checked your air pressure on a regular basis, this is not only going to lead to an unsafe condition for driving. The vehicle won't handle as well, but more importantly, for a lot of the fleet folks out there, hey, you're going to start burning through rubber a little faster. And once a wear pattern, an irregular wear pattern has started, it typically snowballs on itself. So, you might start off by only driving underinflated for a month or two, but once that process has started, that tire now has learned a new wear pattern, and the tread is generally going to wear faster. So not only are you driving in an unsafe condition, but the life of that tread has now been compromised because of an underinflated condition. On the opposite end of the spectrum, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Phil.
No, I was just going to say to you, for those people who say, "Well, I don't check it unless the light goes on in my dash." What could you speak to that, Kevin?
Absolutely. So, the TPMS technology of today that's standard across the industry is more of a look. If your TPMS light goes off, you have a significant issue, meaning it probably has a slow leak, or you've run flat, or you've had what we in the industry refer to as a rapid air loss. The word blowout around here is kind of a dirty word, but
it doesn't really happen that often. No, seriously, I can remember one time where I had a crash I investigated where it was an actual tire blowout, and that was a sidewall blowout. We won't mention the manufacturer or anything, but that was years and years ago. It just, people, oh, my tire blew out. No, you had an air out, it typically does not happen. Am I correct in saying that, Kevin?
I'm not, I don't know. I don't have any specific blowout data at my disposal, Phil. But what I will say is that typically, if you're seeing your TPMS light go off, that means it's not, hey, let's wait 2 weeks and take a look at this. You probably should have taken a look at it last week or the week before that. And it's a problem that's been a problem that the TPMS sensor is only just now picking up. There are a few companies out there today that offer kind of a step further, a step beyond your legacy TPMS technology. Some of them will actually install sensors in the inner liner of the tire.
Okay.
And these sensors can detect a slow air leak in some cases 3 to 4 weeks before the legacy TPMS sensor will. Granted, there's a cost to those types of technology, but one company that I've had the opportunity to work with in the past is called Revo Technologies, and Sanjay, the founder over there, has some really, really cool technology at his disposal, and they've done some really cool things in terms of taking a sensor and literally looking at all 4 tires, bringing all of that data together in one algorithm. And they can even predict, when exactly that tire will fail based off of when the leak starts. So there's some really cool stuff out there in the industry today.
Yeah.
And it's, as we move forward, especially in fleets that require constant uptime, think autonomous, think delivery. In those worlds, that's where this tire pressure tracking technology is really going to take off. But when we look at, having proper inflation, there's more than just being underinflated, right? So you could be overinflated. It can go the other direction. And in an overinflated tire, the biggest point of concern there is you've overinflated the tire. So now the bottom of that tire kind of turns out like this, and you've reduced that contact patch to the road. So what was, the footprint of the tire has just all of a sudden shrunk, sometimes even by half, because there's more air in that tire and it's kind of ballooned out a little bit, which is also relatively unsafe for driving.
Bad, right? Just plain bad, right?
Technical term.
Technical term.
Hey, we only have a couple more minutes here. So, Kevin, you had talked about your triangle. Do you want to go to slide 4 and talk about the triangle thing that you had shared with us?
Absolutely, yeah. So when we think about how a tire is built, and a lot of the major tire manufacturers, this is what keeps them up at night when they're looking to build a new product. Tire compounding, there's an awful lot that goes into it, and a lot of very, very smart engineering folks that figure out which compounds need to be added and in what amounts. But in reality, in order to build a tire that's going to perform well, there are some serious factors to consider. And typically, if you want the cost of that tire to remain the same, there's going to be a trade-off. So if we imagine, there's this, and on slide 4, you guys see kind of a tire triangle, and there's 3 main factors. You have fuel efficiency, you have wear resistance, and then you have traction. And traction, you could swap the word traction out with, say, performance or ride comfort or even road noise. That traction is really, what feature are you really trying to achieve with this tire? And really, you sort of have to make a decision. How do we want this tire to perform? Do you want a really, really fuel efficient tire that has phenomenal performance and fantastic traction and is quiet and is comfortable? Well, it's going to be really tough to make a tire like that also is very resistant to wearing, to premature wear, or a tire. Your typical tire might last 45,000 miles, but in this case, if you're really focused on fuel efficiency and traction, well, hey, that mileage might come down to 25 or 30. And so it's striking this careful balance between the different features and benefits of each tire that a lot of the major tire manufacturers, that's their biggest challenge. And of course, you could try and achieve all 3, but that's just going to make your triangle a little bigger. And what that translates to the consumer is a much higher cost. The larger the triangle, the more expensive the tire.
Makes sense. Well, I think from a fleet perspective, we want the wear resistance. We want it to last as long as possible. We want the better traction, maybe not as quiet. And we want it to get us 40 miles to the gallon. So, I mean, I guess we have to pay very expensive tires.
For too much, Bob. You're not asking for too much at all.
Yeah. No, that's great. This is all really good stuff, and we could talk forever about tires. I think that your slides are really helpful for all those who are watching on YouTube. Again, if you're listening on a podcast platform, please go to YouTube and check this out. Kevin, is any of this information on the Discount Tire website, or is there another resource you could direct people to?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to tires.com or discounttire.com. And then we have a kind of a tips and guides section, and there's a safety related page within our tips and guides. But basically, all sorts of great information on there. And we also have a proprietary online fitment guide where folks could go and literally plug in your make, model, year and learn what different types of tires there are. See real customer data, real feedback from other folks that have used these tires. And be able to compare. It's one of the hallmarks of what we do here is we're brand agnostic. You see the Firestone poster behind me, but really here we're focused on providing a phenomenal service experience for our customers and listening. and being able to speak to the facts of the many different products out there. I don't think anybody ever gets excited about going to buy a set of tires. It's not the sexiest thing in the world, but
You haven't talked to
what's-
Bob and I before, Kevin.
We love
space
tires.
geeks,
we
Yeah.
we want to be able to educate our customers and our fleet customers to make the best decision for what makes sense for them.
That's great. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and talking about this. Phil and I talk about tires and tire safety all the time, so it's really good to have somebody come on and kind of back up what we're saying. Before we go, does anybody have any last thoughts? Kevin, do you have any closing thoughts, or Phil?
I appreciate the opportunity to get together, guys. It was great to be here, and I don't know if you guys are going to any of the fleet events this year, but we go to AFLA and NAFA and many of the big ones out there. And if anyone ever has any other questions about tires, we're always right here and a great resource. And thank you guys so much for the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, no, thanks for being on. And Phil, before you have any closing thoughts, I'll just kind of have the breaking news, but we're going to do live podcast broadcasts from NAFA at the NAFA booth on the floor. So that'll be kind of exciting. We don't really have any of it planned yet, but we hope to have some interviews scheduled and take a few minutes to talk to some different people. So if you want to come on and talk about tires again, please stop by.
Yeah, we'll see you guys in Maryland.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Phil, how about you? Any last thoughts?
Well, Bob, when this one is put out there for the viewing public, it's going to be going right into Super Bowl weekend. Okay, so I'm just going to get off tires for a second and say, hey, watch the impaired driving and watch out for those who are impaired. I'm going to say that especially to you, Kevin, being in the Phoenix area, and I apologize ahead of time for all the rowdy Philadelphia Eagle fans that are going to be there. It's my team. Okay. So my apologies for that, but yeah, just be safe and watch out for it seems to always go hand in hand with some of the Super Bowl celebrations.
That's a good thing to say. I hope everybody has fun and enjoyed the game. Kevin, thanks a lot. I really appreciate this. And Phil, thank you again very much. We will be talking again real soon.
Thanks, Paul.